Secondly, the immortality of the soul may be proved from the light of nature and reason. 1. From the consent of all nations. Cicero says that as we know by nature that there is a God, so we judge by the consent of all nations that souls remain after death and are immortal. And in everything, he says, the consent of all nations is to be reckoned the law of nature. So Seneca calls it a public persuasion, or before, and observes that the consent of men, either fearing hell or worshipping God, is of no small moment to persuade unto it. This was no doubt the original belief of man, discoverable by the light of nature, but as that became more dim and men more degenerate, they lost sight of truths, and of this among the rest. Thales, a Malsian, who lived about 600 years before Christ, is said to be the first who taught it, though others say Pharocles was the first who asserted it and was contemporary with him. And some ascribe the first knowledge of it to the Chaldeans and the Indian Magi, and others to the Egyptians, who it may be received it from Abraham, and from them Plato had it. However, it has been embraced by the wisest among the heathens that the best of their philosophers, as Pythagoras, Socrates, Plato, Seneca, Cicero, and others, and by the host of their poets, as Homer, Phoclides, Virgil, Ovid, and though denied by some, these were such that were of the worst sect of them. And though by some amongst the Jews, as by the Sadducees, yet there are but few, and the most irreligious sect among them. Indeed, this doctrine has been received not only among the more religious sects of the heathens, as the Brahmins, among the Indians, and the Druids with us, and among the more civilized nations, but among the more savage and ignorant, even the wild Greenlanders, as appears by the accounts lately published concerning them. 2. This may be concluded from an extinction of man, soul and body being abhorrent to man, as it is said to be the peoples last mentioned, the death of the body, though nature is reluctant to it, yet in many instances there has been a voluntary and cheerful submission to it. Many good men have not loved their lives unto death to serve their country. Others have not counted their lives dear to themselves, but have freely parted with them for the sake of religion and truth. And others have chose rather to depart this life and be with Christ. Death to them has been more eligible than life. But a total extinction, to have no being at all, nature starts at, which must be the case if the soul dies with the body. 3. It may be argued from the natural desire in man to be religious in some way or another. This is so natural to man that some have chosen rather to define man as religious than a rational animal. All nations have had their gods they worshipped, professes some religion or other, and have kept up some kind of worship, even the most blind and ignorant, barbarous and savage. But why are they concerned to worship God and to be solicitous about religion if there is no future state and the soul remain not after death, but that it perish with the body? There is nothing can be a greater damp to religion and mortality than the disbelief of the immortality of the soul. For then one may encourage another in all vicious practices and say, let's eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. And it will be all over with us. Nothing more discourages virtue and encourages vice. Yet 4. There is a consciousness of sinning in man. Guilt arises in their consciences, in accounting of sin. Even in the very heathen there is a conscience bearing witness to their actions, good or bad, and their thoughts, the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another on account of them. from whence arise fears of the displeasure and wrath of incensed deity and of divine judgment, all which show that there is a future state in which souls remain immortal and are accountable to God for their actions, and which still more appears. 5. Not only from the strings of conscience, but from the horrors and terrors, dread, trembling and panic fears wicked men are sometimes seized with, as Felix was on hearing of judgment to come. And of these fears, as many say, were the effects of education, which could not be the case of Felix and many others. It is strange that these fears should be so general and extensive as they are, and more strange to have none have been able to shake them off entirely, and stranger still that those who have run the greatest lengths in infidelity and atheism should not be able to free themselves from them. These things not only show that there is a divine being to whom men are accountable for their actions, but that there is a future state after death in which men exists, when they shall be either in happiness or in misery. 6. The belief that this may be further argued from the providence of God concerned in the distribution and disposal of things in this life, which is oftentimes very unequal. Wicked men prosper and enjoy a large portion of ease and plenty, and good men are generally afflicted with a variety of troubles, which has been sometimes a sore temptation to good men and difficult for them to account for, as it was with Asaph and Jeremiah. Psalm 73, 2, 3, 12, 13, 14, Jeremiah 12, 1 and 2, which difficulty can only be solved by the supposition of a future state, the immortality of the soul, and its existence after death, when such who have been wicked and in their lifetime receive good things, the good men evil things, the latter will have their comforts and the former their torments. Otherwise, good men, if they were to have hope in this life only, they would be of all men the most miserable. Luke 16 verse 25, 1 Corinthians 15 verse 19. Wherefore, 7. The mortality of the soul may be concluded from the justice of God, who is the judge of all the earth, who will do right, for righteous is the Lord, though his judgments are not so manifest in this life. It is a righteous thing with God to render tribulation to them that trouble his people, and to fulfill the promises he makes to his saints, to present the justice, faithfulness, veracity of God are not so clearly seen in bestowing favours and blessings on good men according to his promises, and in punishing wicked men according to his threatenings. It seems therefore reasonable to believe that the souls of men are immortal, and that their bodies shall rise from the dead, and there shall be a future state in which good men will be happy and wicked men miserable. 8. It seems not agreeable to the wisdom of God to create man in his image and likeness, and give him dominion over the whole brute creation, constitute him Lord over all, make the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air and the fishes of the sea for his sake and use, and yet he and they should have the same exit, the one die and perish, to be totally extinct, as the other. This does not purport with the wisdom of God. But 9. Between the spirits of men and those brutes there is a difference. The one, at death, go upwards to God that made him and gave them to men, and live forever, either in a state of bliss or woe, and the other go downwards to the earth and die and live no more. Ecclesiastes 3:21. If the soul is not immortal but dies with the body, the brutes in many things have the advantage of men, and their state and condition in this life is in many respects superior to theirs. They are not so weak and helpless at first coming into the world as men are, and who are so far a long time nor subject to so many diseases as they are. In some, the senses are quicker than in men, and they have sight, hearing, taste, and smell, and some animals excel men in one or another of these. The brutes have no fearful apprehensions of danger beforehand, and when in any, their only concern is for the present, to get clear of it, and when it's over, they are in no dread of its return. They know nothing of death, are in no expectation of it, nor fear about it. But men know that they must die, and expect it, and through fear of it are subject to bondage, and attended with great anxieties. And therefore, if the soul dies with the body, their present condition is worse than that of brutes.